Welcome to The Agent Secret. My name's Georgie Wolfenden, and this is the show that is dedicated to making you feel your best, whatever your age. On this episode of The Agent Secret, I'll be speaking to Lisa Sanfilippo, sleep expert, psychotherapist, and yoga teacher. We all know if you're not getting enough sleep, you do not feel your best. And Lisa will share her inside secrets on how to get a better night's sleep. Hi Lisa, we're thrilled to have you on the show today. And we're speaking about sleep. And I wanted to kind of ask you, as a sleep expert, what made you get into that whole area of sleep?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. It's always lovely to work with you. I got interested in sleep because I was just a raging insomniac in my 20s. And if you've ever had a really prolonged period of time where you haven't slept, it really affects everything. And I just sort of thought, I really don't want to spend my life like this. So I went to my doctor, and I was really lucky. She told me two things. She checked me out. She said, nothing's physically wrong with you, but this yoga stuff that you're interested in, I think that's something that you really need to have a look at. So she encouraged me in that direction. And she said, there's some things that you've been through, so maybe try some psychotherapy. And the thing that she didn't do is she didn't prescribe me any sleeping pills, because she just said, you're in your 20s. If you start this now,
you're never going to stop.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So she saved me a lifetime of dependency on sleeping pills, which I will tell you, I would have taken them,
because
without,
you're desperate at that point.
Yeah, you're really desperate. So it was interesting. I learned how to do yoga, and at that time there was no like bunch of stuff on the internet. This is the 90s, so there was like a book with like an Indian man wearing a diaper, and it said like stand on your head and stand on your shoulders and this will help you sleep. And I was like, not really sure, but let me just keep going with the yoga. And I learned stuff that really changed the way I felt.
Okay.
And that was the first layer. And then I did some psychotherapy, and I was like, okay.
Was the yoga, was that quite quick? That was changing how you
I could
felt?
feel a difference right away after my first class. I was like I wasn't a chain smoker, but like back in the 90s, you could still smoke in bars, and I was smoking and drinking lots of coffee and going out at night and working 2 jobs, and my nervous system was a mess. So I did this yoga class, and I was just like, oh my God, I feel like my feet are touching the ground for the first time in years. And I was like, okay, this is interesting. So I just kept with it, and I was like, okay, something new is happening here.
Okay.
So that kind of switched me on to trying everything.
Yeah. To kind of, and obviously it got your sleep back on track, did it?
It did, and at every point in my life, the big thing for me is that when something goes out of balance, my sleep will be the first place that it shows up. Some people, their skin breaks out or their digestion goes off, but for me, it was always the sleep.
Yeah.
So I've had to learn lots of different ways of managing all the different changes in life, like careers and different life circumstances. And
Lisa, how common are sleep problems?
I think sleep problems, like sleepless nights, are incredibly common. Almost everyone has them.
Okay.
There are some people for whom it sticks around for a much longer period of time.
Yeah.
And it totally depends. Some people, the sleep will be absolutely perfect and flawless until you have kids.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of up all night with the kids, and then the sleep kind of breaks at that point. Sometimes it repairs, but for a lot of people, that's the kind of sticking point, or, doing shift work or a big life transition. So, sometimes people are like, oh, I've been a great sleeper up until ...
And then we look at something to point to that.
There's usually
change.
Yeah.
But most people, as they get older, I'm guessing, like, because women in their 40s, will they have bad sleep now and then? That's normal, is it, do you think?
I just want to kind of reel back a little bit on the idea of bad sleep. I think what's really interesting is that we get into this habit of labeling it good sleep or bad sleep. I had a bad night, I had a good night. And that kind of gets people really anxious.
Really stressed.
Like, you were saying, if it's okay to say this, you had a bad night's sleep. And that kind of gets you thinking, oh my God, I have to have a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
And it's this, this kind of binary idea of like good or bad. You can say, well, I only had X number of hours of sleep, or I didn't have enough sleep. And then that invites you to say, okay, well, I need a bit more rest today. How am I going to get that? most people will have interrupted nights, or they'll sleep a little bit less. Some people will freak out about it more than others, and other people will just kind of innately take a nap or get some rest, or just know that the next night it'll be fine. So there's a kind of psychological aspect where we freak ourselves out about it, and then there's the physiological stuff, which if you're taking some sort of medication or a supplement or something that's getting in the way, or drinking caffeine too late, then that's kind of inhibiting it from the physiological kind of bricks and mortars type of perspective. But most people can identify with it.
I guess I've had kind of this insomnia problem for about 9 weeks now. I'm getting probably 2 hours a night.
That's not enough.
Which is not enough.
Yeah, no.
But now I'm so anxious. By the time you get into the bed, you think, I'm going to get an early night. So you're in there at 9:30 and then you look at your watch and it's 4.
Yeah.
So how do you stop that anxiety? Because I think half of it is the anxiety that you're not going to sleep. That's the problem in the end.
I mean, this is the thing. Nobody wants to hear this, but I think when you start to put it in place, I mean, I definitely do this myself, is figure out some way to layer in rest during the day. I think that's an absolute must, because the way that our lives are structured right now, we're not doing that. We're filling every spare minute, and the human body really needs downtime. It's like, if you think about it, it's kind of insane that we run seemingly full tilt all day and then expect our bodies to get into this deep state of calm and safety and relaxation to go to sleep. We're not machines. We don't switch from on to off. So
do you think modern life, it's not conducive to having a restful night's sleep anymore? Do you think there's an element of, like you're saying, how we're living?
I think what we really need to do is kind of take responsibility for ourselves and our nervous systems, and just look at your diary and go, where am I going to find, not can I find, but where am I going to find a little pocket of rest?
Prioritize it.
It's as imperative as brushing your teeth or having a shower, and it's you take 5 or 10 minutes and your nervous system just
calms down,
settles, calms down. Even if it's just a minute or two, to just let everything drop back down, and then your body and and your mind and how your brainwave patterns work, they will start to repattern to be able to relax when it comes time. So I think that's where the kind of yoga practices that are tailored to be really really user friendly, really accessible, really doable, they've completely changed my life. And I've seen, working with people who have very different lives to mine, that you can stick those things in your day and you actually feel a lot better. And then if you don't have a huge full night's sleep, then that you're not going to be miserable or not be able to function the next day. Okay, I'm going to get a little rest, and that that bit of time that I've got to spend doing a podcast or writing a report or doing a press release or whatever it is that you're doing, that you'll be able to be fresh for it.
So your clients, are you kind of teaching them how to get that intermittent resting within their day?
Yeah, and sort of, when I work with somebody individually, like it's all stuff that I've had to do for myself. We look at what their day looks like and we go through their diary and go, okay, well, how are we going to change something? And I had a client recently who was doing really high intensity exercise, like a kind of CrossFit thing. And I just said, what if you put that, what if you took that out of the picture just for a week, just to see what that does to your nervous system, and then put it back in the morning instead of doing it at night. And, maybe layer in something like a yoga practice every other day. And then there are other people who don't have regular exercise regimes, and just getting that little bit of movement or a little bit of rest. The thing is that we actually come to enjoy it rather than it being something
exactly right. You're scared to go to bed, you're petrified, you're just waiting, and then looking at the clock obviously is a disaster, isn't it, on the phone? You've got to just stop that.
Probably.
Because I'm going, I'm going to get 5 hours, 4 hours, 3 hours, and by that point you're completely freaked out, aren't you?
I know. It's like, by this time, if I go to bed,
half an hour,
I'm
might actually just get up right now.
That's
exactly.
Right. I think when you get kind of better at resting, then sleep sort of feels less foreign.
Because you haven't been going full pelt the whole day. You've had that little insight into I can rest.
Yeah, and then that's what I do. I mean, I have a pretty heavy psychotherapy caseload. You know, like I see a lot of people and I see them relatively back to back, but I have a little, 10-minute period, and I spend a little time digesting what's gone on in the session, preparing for the next one. And then sometimes I'll just lie down on the floor, with my legs up on a chair like this, feet on the seat, back on the floor, and just take 2 minutes and put my hands on my chest, let my eyes rest. And you'll have to do it and try it and let me know how it goes. But I find that just even that gives me a little bit more fuel in the tank for the next hour. And then if I have a half an hour, I can close my eyes for 20 minutes and meditate, which is something that I learned to do probably about 12 years ago. I go on and off with it. And like, it astonishes me how simple it is. Like, you don't have to think of nothing. Mm-hmm. You're just, you have a little phrase, little 2-syllable phrase you repeat. Your mind goes, off on one. And okay, back to that. And then everything else starts to calm down. Whatever you need to process, whatever you need to digest from your day, it just gets a lot easier. It sort of falls into place more easily.
And are you sleeping well now? Is that kind of just a pattern? Yes, you do. So you rarely have the insomnia periods.
I mean, sometimes I have interrupted sleep. Like, my partner works in news, and so his schedule is different every single week. So sometimes he'll be on early, sometimes he'll have an overnight, and some days, he'll have a mid. So there are a lot of days when, despite, how well or poorly I might be sleeping, the alarm goes off at some ungodly hour of the morning, and he just presses the snooze button, and I'm like, hello, I can't get back to sleep.
Okay.
So, what I've learned to do is, it's not something that I would recommend as the only line of defense, but I just get the noise canceling headphones on, and it's a very silly thing, but I will literally listen to the first book of Harry Potter over and over again, just to get like that half an hour of falling back to sleep.
Yeah.
But if I really have a big disturbed night, what I'll do is I'll just get out of bed. I will, do some stretches so that my body feels more comfortable. I'll do some breathing. And then, if I'm still not able to settle, I'll read until I am.
Okay. That's quite brave, isn't it? Because when you're in that insomnia, crazy mode, you're just like, I'm going to sleep in a minute, and then you drive yourself insane.
It just makes you more tense.
Yeah, it does.
I just get out of bed, and, usually if I settle my body, then my mind follows. And that's what I've found over and over again with all the people that I've worked with. It does really work. Sometimes you can distract your mind and your body will settle down, but it's very powerful. We have more nerve messaging going from the body to the brain than the other way around. What we've learned about sort of polyvagal theory says, like, if you can feel safe in your body, then your thoughts will actually follow.
Okay.
Right?
That makes sense.
So, when you do, for example, when you breathe out longer than you breathe in, maybe we'll do that if you'd like. When you breathe out longer than you breathe in, your heart rate actually starts to come down. Right? And when your heart rate starts to come down, and your breathing's more regular, then kind of magically the thoughts may slow down. They may feel a little less overwhelming, and it's possible to get a little bit more perspective on things.
I mean, yoga definitely works. You can feel, I've been doing it for the last, week or two, and you can feel there is some change, and you're having more better nights than worse nights.
But it is sort of funny, though. Yoga is a pretty big term, and it can mean everything from blaring dance music and really fast movement. Nothing wrong with that, but it's not particularly good to get you into the part of your nervous system that helps you sleep.
Yeah.
Right?
Are you doing more yoga nidra? Is that what you're kind of...
Well, that's another interesting thing. Yoga nidra is, it's a kind of guided relaxation. And I don't really, it's interesting. I don't like having my eyes closed and having someone tell me what to do with my mind. Maybe I'm a little bit too, I don't know, resistant to that. But I'd rather just let my body relax rather than, but some people really swear by yoga nidra, but it's not a particularly trauma sensitive approach for some people. I don't like having someone else's voice telling me what to do. I've had some things in my past where I'm like, okay, let's just let my body do what it needs to do on its own. But yoga nidra is like rotating your awareness around your body. Nothing wrong with it. If people like it, fantastic. But I teach more of how to actually pull the tension out of your own muscles.
Okay.
Like how to stretch them so that, if the thing is, when you're in your sympathetic nervous system, which is, people think of it as fight or flight, you have more tension in some of these arm muscles and your thigh muscles. Certain physiological changes happen. And if you're stressed a lot throughout the day, then it's really important to do the equivalent of like taking off the tightness, you know? So that, it's almost like your body feels a bit heavier, a bit softer. So if yoga is doing that, if it's having that effect, that's the kind of yoga that you need for sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is there a style? Is it called a style of yoga if people are trying to access?
I mean, I would say, hatha yoga generally, but I mean, you have to really see how you actually feel when you go to whatever class or you look at whatever video. And what I tend to show people how to do is just have a little sequence. I'm not like a big fan of having to impose a sequence on people, but I kind of found about 10, 12 poses that if you adjust them to the person, they kind of hit all of the different parts of the body where we squirrel away our attention throughout the day. And it's like, I actually really enjoy just putting the mat out and just getting everything to feel calmer and better. It's not like you're trying to do something to yourself. It's like, it just feels nice.
Just trying to let go almost a bit.
Exactly.
Rather than that clinging on feeling after a kind of long day.
Yeah, because when you were saying in your bed, you're like, I just need to sleep.
And everything's tense, isn't it?
Exactly. And
my breath's like...
and you bring and you just made this, like, you made fists and it's like, oh, feeling tense. And so the opposite is just like letting your shoulders drop and letting your...
Sending Wolfie upstairs and go upstairs. It's you're bothering me. I've got the ear things in. The whole thing's going on, but I know it's going. I know it's all. I
feel a little
wrong.
stressed when you're describing it.
I feel it's all wrong, but I'm still doing it. It feels like you have to sort of break that habit. Maybe.
So how about I give you some really simple things to do, and then in a week you let me know, like when you've done them in a week, let me know how
that'd
they
be
go.
Fantastic, because you want an action plan. You feel like that, don't you? You feel like, how am I going to get out of this cycle? I think that's what most people are suffering from, this more chronic insomnia, probably.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of an important way to look at it. How do you break the circuit or break the cycle of it? How do you kind of just go, okay, let's do something a little different so that I feel different about it. I feel differently about it.
Yeah.
And then I don't have to worry about it. And, and I find sometimes when people come, when they either start reading the book or they start, a program with me or, just undertaking something, where you're handing it over to someone to say, like, can you help me?
Yeah. It's a relief, isn't it? It's the relief of it probably as well, when you're kind of helping people with that ongoing problem.
Yeah, and I think a lot of sleep, it's interesting, a lot of sleep is being able to feel safe.
That's interesting.
Just being able to feel like it's okay
to rest,
to leave things for a little while. And it's very elemental. It's like a lot of the stuff that I teach, I sort of realized, years into it, that it's almost like, I realized a few years into doing the yoga work as I trained as a therapist, that a lot of what we do when we try to help ourselves sleep better is almost like what a parent would do for a child or like a little baby, because when it comes time to go to sleep, I think we're all on some level, and I don't mean this in an insulting way, but we're all like little babies. Yeah. We just want to feel like safe and cozy, and our adult brains are worrying with lots of stuff, and just to feel held and soothed and just really calmed, like that's what we have to be for ourselves. We have to kind of, I don't know, the word might be self-parent in a way.
Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah.
So, how might you soothe your little ones? How old are your kids now?
So they're 10 and 12.
10 and 12. Okay. So did they still like hugs from mom?
Oh, yeah. They're still very much like that. Astrid would have me in her bed every single night. Because she even has these problems with her sleep. So it's funny, isn't it?
And so you being there and just your presence and down. You're helping her to calm down. So, you got to be able to do that for yourself in a way.
Yeah. So I have this whole sleep routine going on for myself, which is 20 minutes of yoga, a hot bath with all the oils.
Right after the yoga, you take the hot bath?
Not right after, but like just before bed.
Okay.
Some magnesium tablets. Mm-hmm. And then someone at a wedding did recommend melatonin.
Okay, we'll talk about that in a minute.
I haven't quite taken that. And then I do this bed of nails. Put my feet into this bed of nails
And
before I get
how
into
does
bed.
how does that make you feel?
I mean, I quite like it.
Okay. Does it relax you, or does it make you feel a little bit more energized, or?
I mean, I think it makes my feet feel better. So then when I kind of got them in the bed at the end, they feel quite comfortable, less stressed.
Okay, but what about the rest of you?
Yeah, it is probably quite energizing actually.
Okay.
Reflecting on
So
it.
this is the stuff that we'd want to think through. Okay, is there anything else in your bedtime routine?
And then I
that
just
you
do a little bit of reading, and just
Okay.
kind of calm, meditating.
So that's quite a lot.
Yeah.
That's a big,
It's
hefty
growing all
bedtime
the time,
routine.
I think.
More stuff.
Yeah,
Okay.
more stuff.
So so what I would say is, magnesium can be helpful. I'm not a nutritionist or a naturopath or anything, but I've taken magnesium myself, and it just really depends on what the composition of everything else you're taking is, and you want to check with that. But interestingly, some people they think melatonin's good for sleep, but what's really interesting is that it doesn't work beyond the first or second night, because it's really only for the type of sleep disruption that you would have if you've got jet lag. So melatonin, I'll just give you the background on this, and then we'll talk about bedtime routine. But your brain will convert serotonin, the sort of happy neurotransmitter, into melatonin when it gets signals through the back of your retina that day is turning into night. So when we go from bright light to darkness, then we get melatonin production starting in the brain. So the what melatonin actually does, and the jury's kind of out whether melatonin gets through the blood-brain barrier if it's taken nutritionally. So there's all sorts of hubbub about that. But even for people that find that it works, it doesn't tend to work long term, and it involves quite a few of your neurotransmitters. So it's not really something that I'd look at as a solution.
Okay.
But the big thing for you, knowing a little bit about you, is that you're really kind of high powered, and you tend more towards feeling anxious, or just being more on.
Yeah.
So what I would do is I'd say, okay, well, just notice if the bath is too hot, if it's raising your core body temperature. This is something that we women over 40 need to really be aware of. If we're raising the core body temperature, it's going to be harder to get to sleep, because one of those signals to your body, from your body to your brain that it's time to sleep, is that the core body temperature comes down. So just making sure that we're not taking too hot of a bath too late.
I think I definitely am having boiling.
So let's
knock that.
Take that. Maybe a shorter bath, maybe not so hot. Have a shower, whatever it is. Okay. So the other thing is that the yoga, I would actually, get everything ready. Take a shower, whatever. Get the pajamas on or the dressing gown, nice fluffy slippers or whatever, roll out the little yoga mat or the sheepskin, and do a few stretches a little bit closer to bedtime. And I'm not sure about the bed of nails, because that can actually be quite stimulating to the nerve endings.
Yeah.
And what we really want is, instead of your body to feel fizzy, we want it to feel heavy, right? Just like, if you take off tight clothes, you go, oh.
Yeah.
That's the feeling that I would like you to have, so that you can feel really settled and get to sleep. So anything that gives you that, like a friend of mine makes these little wooden dowels that you roll on your feet, and that's kind of massages the foot muscles. You can just do it with your hands too. So magnesium, Neil makes a really nice magnesium cream that's really good for your feet.
You can massage it on that. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be like any specific product, but just that kind of touch where you're working the muscle tension out. And the feet have all those nerve endings that correspond to the nerves going into the spine, so that's a really good place to focus. And then the yoga stretches, being able to open up your diaphragm.
Yeah.
The kind of breathing muscle, it kind of expands and contracts as we inhale and exhale. That massages all of the digestive organs.
Where can we access your yoga sequences?
The book that I wrote called Sleep Recovery has, like a kind of one pager that shows you the little movements.
Yeah.
And like the really, really big thing about it is that if you rush through them, it kind of doesn't do you much good. You have to take kind of slow, long out breaths and that can take a few days to practice it. But, as we're sitting here, I'm sort of, doing a little bit of the breathing.
Making me breathe like that. Actually.
Making you breathe.
Yeah.
And that's interesting because human beings, we have these mirror neurons in our brains. So if we're around somebody who's really like high intensity, it's important for us to regulate our breathing, breathe more slowly so that whatever intensity is coming at us, we don't
cope with it.
Take it on.
Yeah.
We just stay in that kind of regular breath and heartbeat pace.
Yeah.
Okay, back to your bedtime routine. So we've got yoga, which we're going to push to once you've got your pajamas on. And
sheepskin rug.
Whether you have a vegan sheepskin rug or a sheepskin rug, something that's like kind of cozy and nice and, something where you have a little bit of a ritual. But, if you're traveling, you don't want to freak out because you don't have that with you. The thing that's nice about the stretches is that they go wherever you go.
It's easy.
It's super easy, and you don't need anything. So, whereas products can be really nice, what I don't want is for people to freak out if they forgot their magnesium cream or if they don't have their, whatever it is, supplement.
Yeah, not to get attached to everything then.
I think that's really important because that's another thing that we get worried about, So does that kind of give you, not so much on the bath, not too hot, not too late. Yoga. And then what would be really useful for you is, I don't know if you look at your phone when you're in bed.
Yeah.
Your eyes just went boom.
I
like,
do.
yes, I do.
I've got to stop doing that because then late at night you've got this query or something that someone's asking you.
I know it's really, really
because you
hard
can't solve
not
it
to.
either, can you?
No.
Someone's saying, can you do that? Well,
No.
you think, shit, now I'm thinking about
so
that.
Some people use their phones for Sudoku or, I play a game called Spelling Bee where you have to make up as many words as you can with 7 letters and you have to use the one in the middle. I mean, that sort of thing is contained, like a crossword puzzle or something like that is really contained. Not like, I don't know, I never played Angry Birds, but I imagine with the animation, that's quite a lot of flashing bells and whistles type thing. But something that's really contained, if you've got a sepia-toned screen, not the blue light, that's actually okay. But if you're doing things like looking at TikTok, which I don't even have on my phone, or Instagram, or anything where there are links onward, what's happening is that you're making more work for your brain. You're actually increasing the volume of stuff going into your mind.
Yeah.
And what you want to do is be able to slow things down.
Yeah.
Which is why reading is helpful because your eyes will scan across a printed page only at the pace that they can go.
Yeah.
It's not like something's coming at you at its own pace. So I would really look at things like that for your routine. And what's really nice is that, when you're putting your kids to bed, take that time to get into a meditative state yourself. And it's going to be, great for them. Sometimes I'll read to my stepson and like he'll, cuddle up on my shoulder and then I'll just sit with him and, breathe and let my breathing become really regular. And you can tell when kids fall asleep because their breathing becomes very regular. So, you can use that as time for both of you.
And they're so relaxed, aren't they?
Yeah.
Whereas,
don't use that as time to go through your to-do list and try and tick off the things that you've got to do. And then what happens is that actually when you kind of compress the time that you're expending mental energy on stuff, I think we tend to become a bit more efficient about it. When you do things like get downtime, you do that lying down on the floor, with your legs on the chair, letting your heartbeat come down. Your mind is working on things in a very different way.
That's true, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, this is kind of a silly analogy, but you remember the film Back to the Future? They re-released it. And the scientist comes up with the idea that enables time travel, by being on the toilet and then getting hit on the head. It's not when he's thinking about it. It's like, the idea that you come up with these great ideas while you're just in the shower and your mind is wandering or you're off on a walk and, something will come to you if you give it the space. And that's really good for your creativity. And it's also really, really good for your sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So getting back to your bedtime routine, we've gone a little bit off track here. I wouldn't go too heavy on supplements. maybe B vitamins as a regular part of your routine.
I've got so many supplements, Lisa. It's because you always sent these things. You start, and then you don't know what's working, what isn't. So you have to.
Well, didn't you
strip
have an
it all
interesting
back.
story about that recently?
About the mushrooms?
Tell me about mushrooms.
Well, I was just overdosing.
Like, what kind of
on
mushrooms
it.
are we? What are we really talking
When
about
the
here?
Greeks cook, they say, "Oh, just a little bit of that." They don't do measurements, and I was being a
Okay.
bit like that with the mushrooms. So I was taking a
Okay.
tablespoon of these mushrooms.
Like, what kind of mushrooms are we? There are a lot of different kinds of
Yeah,
mushrooms.
I'm not going to say the brand, but it was a mix of different.
It was like a mushroom.
Yeah, it was a mushroom blend.
Supplement.
Exactly.
With
And that really, I think, weirdly, it was meant to be a bedtime, but it was saying focus and relax, and I don't think you can focus. That doesn't make sense.
I think
to
those
me.
two things are not really
Exactly
compatible.
So I think that really messed me up. So it gave me some amazing energy actually, because I was taking it in the morning. But then I realised the only thing I've changed.
I mean, I think that this is a really important point, because any new substance that we introduce into our routine, it may have an effect. Like even taking allergy nose spray with some steroids in it, that basically anything that can affect my sleep will. So I'm going to be really careful. And, so if you're noticing a change in your sleep, take a moment and just look at all of the things that you're doing. Just look at your day. Take 10 minutes and run through your day and what you're taking in. And if you're paying attention, you don't necessarily need a professional to tell you, actually, oh, you're having 5 cups of coffee, between noon and 4 p.m. Take some of those away. Have it earlier in the day. Most people know this stuff by now. And if you add a new supplement, it's like, let's just scratch our heads and think, could that be the culprit? And a lot of times it is.
I think it was definitely making me go on overdrive, which wasn't was exacerbating the problem that's sort of there anyway. So,
and here's a little interesting one that I've heard from because I know HRT is a big thing for women in the over 40s camp. I have heard that a lot of women who are taking HRT aren't given adequate guidance on how to take it, and so they're taking progesterone in the morning and wondering why they're so tired all day, and then they don't sleep well at night. Take the progesterone at night, and the estrogen.
It's worrying because it's become so popular, the HRT, but then how are people, like you said, how are they actually using it? Because it's obviously quite powerful stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's like a little takeaway for anyone for whom that's relevant. But pretty much everything that we ingest will have some impact on us, and it's just really important to notice. Just like, when you were talking about the bed of nails, you were expecting it to be relaxing, but when you really thought about it, you're like, actually, this is really energizing. Yeah. And that comes to the kind of the second key thing. Like, so one thing I do is I give people tools, like how to breathe and how to, pull the tension out of the body. And the other is to really build, and I kind of like this word, it's a slightly technical word, interoception, like the ability to sense what's going on inside, right? To know the difference between this actually feels relaxing and this feels slightly agitating or really energizing. And if we're moving really fast, we miss those cues.
Well, because you don't have time you're not digesting anything properly, or you're just...
Yeah. So, so we talked about the fight or flight part of the nervous system, which is, it's not a bad thing. We shouldn't demonize it. It's what gives us, energy and get up and go and focus. But the other part of the nervous system, the parasympathetic nervous system, is associated with rest and digest, right? There are also states of the parasympathetic nervous system which are like being in shutdown. But the healthy part of it that we want is, when our hormone systems and our digestion and everything works really well, it's because we're giving it the opportunity to do so.
Yeah. Giving it the space to do that, what it needs to do.
Yeah. That's a really nice word to just think about, space.
Yeah.
As soon as you have space, what happens? You kind of settle down into it.
One of my friends was saying she was holding her breath all day. So by the time she got into bed, she sort of realised that she was doing that. And you just think, that's so bad for you, isn't it?
I mean, okay, so obviously she was breathing.
Yeah.
Throughout the day. Otherwise, she's got some sort of weird vampire thing going on where she's, able to not breathe all day. But it's the depth and the breadth
and the quality
of your breathing that really matters. Because if you're tense in your rib cage, it does signal from your body to your brain that, that maybe you're not safe, that there's some sort of constraint. And so what can tend to happen is that your cortisol levels can rise, and cortisol is a stress hormone. And, when you get a jolt of stress or fear, and it can just be, even something little like a tube train being late, or, thought about a deadline that you're not going to make, something like that. You get this jolt. And as soon as you get those kind of lifts, it's really important to, in essence, breathe them back down.
Yeah.
To be able to dissipate the stress hormones. So for your friend who's finding her breath constrained, it's interesting. I work with people who are in entertainment, and they might have to wear costumes where there's some constraint, like corsetry or things like that. That really inhibits your breathing, and it makes you feel very different. Yeah. So at various points throughout the day, it takes absolutely nothing to just think, can I breathe a little bit more broadly? And I notice that you're doing
I'm doing
that,
it as you're saying,
and I'm moving my hands a little bit wider, and you're breathing a little bit more, and that's a fantastic way to just give yourself the ability to lower the stress levels in your body.
And you can cope better once you start having, if you've done any yoga in your past, you've done lots of yoga and I've done some yoga, you feel like you can cope with things better as soon as you're breathing.
Yeah. Well, it's the one thing that if we do not breathe, we will literally die. Yeah. We can go without food or water for a period of time, but in a matter of minutes, we're done for if we're not breathing. So if our breath is constrained in some way, it really is a warning and danger signal to the brain. So it's going, hello, we've got a problem here. So as soon as you start breathing more freely, your body and your brain are going, yeah, okay, we're all right. Everything's going to be fine. And one thing that I really want to stress is how when you change your body, when you change what's going on in your nervous system, your mental activity will actually shift, right? Like, so there are these, I took some ongoing professional development in something called polyvagal theory. It's a new way of thinking about the nervous system. And the idea is that if you're in the stress response, right, all of these things are going on in your body and your brain, and you will literally think about the world in a different way to if you're in a kind of collapsed or depressive or shut down state. You'll think of things in a really morose way when you feel that way in your body. Mm-hmm. But when you're in a state where you're breathing well and you're relaxed, you're sitting back a little bit, you feel safe, the way that you think about the world will be different. And that's the place from which you want to make decisions. Exactly. Not from fight or flight, not from shutdown. You want to be able to make decisions from that place of safety.
Yeah.
And so that will affect your ability to rest when you're getting into those nervous system states of safety and calm and, relational ways of thinking and feeling. So everything we can do as human beings to look after ourselves in that way is going to not just help us to sleep better, but actually to accrue less tension throughout the day.
You talk about safety quite a lot in this conversation, which is interesting, isn't it, Lisa?
Because I think, there's really a buzzword around trauma. These days, everybody's really aware that, you get to a certain point in your life and you will have experienced something that has a big impact on you. And the difference between being traumatized by something and being able to heal from it is being able to mount an appropriate response in the moment, or to complete whatever cycle there is that's kind of holding the fear in your body. And so when we can return to a feeling of, agency or a feeling of safety, then of course we're going to sleep better at night. Just on a deeper level. So we've gone from thinking about, routines to the tools that we can use to feel safer during the day to how we recover from things that make a big impact on us.
And do you believe any kind of trauma can be overcome then, Lisa, with the right?
That's such a huge question.
But I lots think, of different trauma people are suffering.
Yeah, it's a big word to describe so many different experiences. So from sexual assault to bomb blasts
Yeah.
to, abandonment to, so it really depends, whatever it is that makes you feel unsafe, you've got to find a way, like a way that isn't costly, where you're making yourself ultimately more stressed to keep the defense in place.
Yeah.
You got to find a way to feel safer, and that's where things like psychotherapy come into play. And what's amazing about the psychotherapy world now, as opposed to 25 years ago when I was in therapy for the first time, is that link between the way that we think and the actual content of our thoughts and our patterns and how that relates to our bodies is so much more widely known. And so not every therapist works with what's going on in the body, but I think when we start to integrate not just like this happened in my family life and this was my past and this is the way I think about it and analyze it, but actually the effect that it has on our bodies, we start to see change that's much deeper.
Yeah.
And much more lasting.
Yeah.
And, when it comes to sleep and rest, we can't necessarily think our way out of insomnia. It's more like we actually have to really feel it.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the link comes in.
It's fascinating, isn't it? So Lisa, what if you've tried all of those different things, the yoga, the breathing, and still you're not sleeping? What should people do then?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think a lot of like really, really deep sleeplessness, if we trail it back, something big may have happened. And it may have been just before the sleep breaks, or it might have been something in the past, that kind of gets reactivated. But, if you've had a bereavement, or like a big breakup or some massive shakeup at work, or you've had an attack or a break-in, something like that. I mean, it's how are we going to say you should stretch that away or take a supplement and it'll all be fine? So I mean, I think this is where I'm really pleased that there's more awareness and acceptance of the role of psychotherapy in society today. Like we hear a lot more about it, and people are more
accepted,
it's more acceptable. It's not a shameful thing, and it's really useful to be able to I call it kind of getting underneath the insomnia. It's great to have those tools and those practices to soothe, but then also to resolve is really important. So on one level, resolution of stuff can be learning how how we humans react when we're presented with conflict or what we perceive to be danger, and how we can maybe resolve things a little bit better. And so I was really lucky that a friend of mine recommended a method called nonviolent communication. And it's kind of a weird name, but bear with me on it. If you look it up, there are like YouTube videos and there are books, and it was originally for conflict resolution, like Middle East conflict and big international things. But it really looks at how we say things like, when this happens, this is how it affects me, or this is how it makes me feel. What I'd really like is this. So would you be willing to ... And so it kind of makes a person take responsibility for how they're affected by something without blaming the other person. And then you get to a kind of peaceful resolution where people get to communicate with one another. So that's a really simple thing where if you start to put that in place in your life, then the things that can be, that you can latch onto, that can keep you awake, like that conflict with that person that you don't know how to resolve, it's much easier to let those go.
It's interesting, isn't it? How you frame things with your partner or your child or someone you care for. It's completely. I was saying to Olympia the other day, I really hear you, Ollie. And she was like, "Oh, I like that you've said." She picked up on that straight away, which is really interesting.
Yeah. No, people really want to be seen and understood, and if we're in that fight or flight state ourselves, we're not able to do that for other people, and we're maybe not even able to get perspective ourselves. So things like therapy can give you some of the tools for that. And then as I was saying a little bit before, one of the things about psychotherapy now is that it's not just analysis of things. If you get a therapist that's informed by what's going on in the body and the nervous system, somatically, you're sort of looking at how we form what's called implicit memory. So it's not always what your thoughts are, but how you physically respond to cues of danger or cues of safety.
Yeah.
And to be able to work through the content of your thoughts and your responses, and to be able to kind of complete those pending bits of business that we haven't been able to lay to rest, those can be real game changers, you know, in being able to really rest at a very deep level. And I know that, you know, I've trained as a psychotherapist. I've had a lot of therapy. I've had some really big boulders of traumatic experiences in my life, some of them early on. Actually, the majority of the stuff that I would consider traumatic was pretty early on. And when you work through that stuff, you actually feel different as a person.
Move away from it, maybe. You've got more of an ability, haven't you?
Yeah. And so, you know, some of the stuff around sleep is, you know, don't drink loads of coffee in the afternoon, you know, look at your use of screens. Like, some of it's that simple, and some of it is deeper. You know, is much deeper. So, you know, that's what I think is so rewarding about taking the kind of sleep recovery approach, is that we get all of those places looked at.
Yeah. Fascinating. Brilliant. Well, I hope that helps me, Lisa, with my sleep.
Yeah. Okay. So what we're going to get you to do is to do 10 minutes once you're, you know, ready for bed, and do some stretches, and then, you know, look at what you're reading. Make sure that you're not reading anything that's too much like work, you know, get a good novel or something that's really relaxing. And then just see, once you get to bed, you'll probably find you're able to maybe sleep a little bit more easily, or maybe a little bit more deeply, and we'll keep in touch about that.
Fantastic. Well, thanks for coming on, Lisa. It's been brilliant. Thank you.
Such a pleasure. Thank you.